A work trip may ruin all I had worked so hard to achieve. I'm 34 years old and go by Claire. I came to see how flimsy my idyllic little world was in retrospect, how a single foolish choice might ruin years of marriage, trust, and well-manicured looks. I had been married for 11 years to David. On the surface, we appeared to be the perfect suburban couple. 2 children, a lovely Tudor-style house in a peaceful neighborhood, him working in a corporate job, and me running the household. The fissures underneath were invisible to the public. I have always acted on impulse. Not dramatically, but in those little instances where I would make choices without giving them any thought. An impromptu internet shopping binge, a last-minute ladies' weekend reservation, or in this instance, an unprofessional business conference. Our 5-year-old Lily and 8-year-old Noah were unaware of how much was going to change. Somehow, in a single moment of weakness, I had been able to forget that they were my whole universe, telling myself that it was simply excitement. The meeting took place in Chicago. Well, I told David that, anyhow. I had been bored and felt stifled by the monotony of suburban wifehood and parenting. Anything that brought back memories of who I used to be was what I desired. Before having children, having to do laundry all the time, packing lunches, and attending PTA meetings, I was a flirty guy the first met at the hotel bar who soon turned into more. I was aware that it was improper. I was well aware of how incorrect it was. But at the time, I didn't give a damn. The weeks after David's discovery of my affair were a haze of stress, quiet therapies, and private discussions when the children weren't there. He planned his next steps, consulted a divorce lawyer, and gathered financial records in a meticulous manner. I was unaware of how exposed I was. I didn't really have much money of my own because I was a stay-at-home mother. It was all David's money. His name appears on every credit card, electricity statement, and food transaction. I had been so preoccupied with keeping our idyllic existence together that I had never given any thought to what would occur if it were to collapse. By then, Ryan had long since left. Chicago's passionate times seemed like a faraway dream. A difficult position, 2 children, and a nasty divorce were not things he was interested in. Men like him are awful at repercussions but excellent at excitement. Although dependable wasn't thrilling, David had always been a dependable investment banker who worked long hours and made sure we never needed anything. My heart wasn't pounding because of solid. Ryan, who worked at the hotel bar, was unique. I was revived by the casual charisma of this 39-year-old freelance photographer. I wasn't just David's wife or the mom who never forgets snack duty when he looked at me. I was Bryn, attractive, and fascinating. I convinced myself that our first night together would only involve drinks and light talk, but we both knew where it was going. There was no denying the electrifying connection we shared. I made a decision that evening. A decision I was certain would alter everything. I didn't think David would know. Whomever does. I thought I was cautious. I constructed phony email accounts, utilized burner apps, and made sure our texts were always erased, but something about my actions must have raised his suspicions. That night, everything broke down. I had just finished folding laundry when David entered. His expression was odd, it was peaceful, yet it had a chilly intensity that I had never seen before. He said, "We need to talk." A marriage is never a suitable place for those 4 words. He was able to locate my phone. The hotel was known to him. Ryan was known to him. He had texts, screenshots, and evidence of everything, somehow. In a matter of seconds, the meticulously crafted deception I had been leading came tumbling down. "How long?" he inquired. He spoke in a hauntingly low voice. I was unable to look at him at all. The nuclear bomb that was ready to explode in our living room was not seen by the children who were watching cartoons in the next room. David went to sleep in the visitor's room. Even if the kids could see something wasn't right, we maintained our look. There was silence at family gatherings. Totally oblivious to the impending earthquake that will shake our household, Noah and Lily were chatting happily. On the kitchen counter one morning, I discovered a pile of divorce papers that were precisely and perfectly organized, exactly like David. He had previously arranged the division of assets and the arrangement for custody after consulting with a lawyer. That's when I realized I had entirely misjudged everything. My reckless relationship and my conviction that I could have an exciting relationship without any repercussions were all falling apart. The most horrifying aspect? I had just totally betrayed the confidence of a man that I was financially reliant on. Taking things for granted was something my mother often cautioned me against. She would warn, "Never put all your eggs in one basket." However, I rolled my eyes since I thought I had everything under control. Those words were now a nice remembrance that kept repeating in my thoughts. David was strategic, had previously consulted our financial advisor, locked joint accounts, and was taking steps to safeguard his assets. Sadly, I found out that I had no personal credit history. After being a stay-at-home mother for years, I became financially invisible. The children became aware of the stress. Lily would sketch these sad family portraits, with large gaps between David and myself. Noah became reticent and quieter. I realized that my marriage was not the only thing I was ruining. My actions were destroying the basis of our entire family. Though snatched minutes in Chicago looked like a foolish fantasy, Ryan was now only a faint memory. Complexity was not what he desired. He didn't want a married woman with 2 children to end her marriage. He is one of those men who are great at making things exciting but awful at dealing with the realities of real life. While the children were eating breakfast, David served me papers. There was nothing more horrifying than his composure. Cold, determined. I was about to discover how badly I had misread everything, and he had already sought advice from the county's top divorce attorney. With the children in another room, he said, "I want full custody. Everything is altered by your carelessness." My affair seemed like a small social faux pas when the term, indiscretion, was used, but we both knew it was far more than that. The initial encounter with David's attorney was a wake-up call for which I was unprepared. I sat there feeling vulnerable and insignificant as they talked about my whole life as if I were a burden. My lack of knowledge about finances became painfully obvious. I didn't even know the bare facts of our joint accounts, let alone our investments or real estate holdings. Since David had taken care of everything, I had been happy to live in a bubble of cozy suburban luxury. "You'll have to find work," David mentioned professors during one of our infrequent discussions. It was a challenge that hovered in the air. I hadn't had a regular job for more than 9 years. Prior to having Noah, I worked as a part-time marketing assistant. That was my final job. The children were having problems. Whenever Lily cried, she would question why her father was sleeping in a different room. Noah had been misbehaving at school, fighting, and withdrawing from others. I knew I was to blame, but I just couldn't bring myself to acknowledge it. Surprisingly, my family did not back me. Only my sister Sophie would engage in conversation with me. "You prepared your bed." I had contacted my mother for assistance, and she had responded icily. "You must lie in it now." David approached everything with a strategy. He had already hired an elite divorce attorney, begun to record everything, and was getting ready for a custody dispute that would leave me with little to no time with the kids. The truth was heartbreaking. My reckless relationship, those snatched moments in Chicago that had seemed so thrilling, were now ruining all I had ever known. The following several months served as a harsh reminder. David approached everything with a strategic mindset. He began recording everything I did in order to gather proof that I was a dysfunctional mother. Nothing was prohibited, including social media activity, bank statements, and text communications. In an attempt to get some assistance, I tried contacting Ryan, but he absolutely ignored me. It seemed like a faraway, almost shameful recollection of those intense nights in Chicago. His kind of man is skilled at short-term thrills, not long-term effects. It was the financial reality that struck me most. I had been purchasing luxury clothes, going on lavish vacations, and shopping online for years without really knowing how much money we had. David had always taken care of the finances, and I had been happy to live in a comfortable suburban bubble. My first interview for a part-time marketing job that would hardly pay for childcare went horribly wrong. The interviewer, a lady in her mid-40s, examined my CV with no disguised disdain. I had virtually lost my professional identity after 9 years of becoming a mom. Then Lily began to have nightmares. She would scream when she woke up and wonder why her parents weren't sharing a room. As Noah grew more reclusive, his academic performance declined. Although I was aware that I was to blame for destroying our family, I found it difficult to acknowledge my guilt. David was trying to figure things out. He had previously discussed the situation with a renowned divorce attorney, presenting himself as the responsible, stable dad. Every action was geared to cut down on the amount of time I spent with the kids. The most horrifying aspect? I had just deceived a man totally, and now I was totally dependent on him. David, who sat opposite from me and appeared to have been chiseled out of rock, made the courtroom feel like a strange, sterile, and frigid world. They were analyzing our whole marriage. Every slip-up, every vulnerable moment exposed for judgment by a stranger in a black robe. Our mediator, a severe woman in her early 50s, was staring at me with this air of dismay and sympathy. I was able to read her mind rather well. Another impetuous lady who sacrificed a wonderful marriage for a brief thrill. In the form of a prosecutor, bank records demonstrating my compulsive internet buying, pictures of erased text conversations, and hotel receipts from Chicago, David's attorney provided proof. Every paper seemed like a nail in my coffin. The mediator said, "Mrs. Harrison, could you tell me why you think you should keep joint custody of the children?" I faltered. The fact was that I lacked a strong case. My financial carelessness, my adultery, and my total lack of security in my career. Everything was against me. David sat there, calm and collected. I was depicted by his lawyer as an unstable, unfaithful wife who would pose a risk to the mental health of the children. What's the worst part? For the most part, what they were stating was accurate. Only my sister Sophie seems to comprehend the complexities of my circumstances. She informed me later that it was more than the affair. In a marriage where you had no identity, it was about losing yourself and feeling invisible for years. Understanding, however, did not alter the outcomes. Those were going to be very significant repercussions. The last court session went by quickly. Even though I felt like I was drowning, David stood there coolly. The judge's remarks pierced me like a blade. Visitation is restricted, visits are controlled, and I must demonstrate my stability with counseling and steady work. Nearly everything was lost. Our lovely home in the Tudor style would be sold. David would continue to have primary custody of Lily and Noah. Every other weekend, I would have visits under supervision. The life I had known was totally destroyed by me. Ryan was far gone, he was simply another chapter in my impetuous tale, with no help or rescue. I felt like I had made the most costly error of my life during those fleeting moments in Chicago. David didn't have to boast about it. He won by rebuilding our family's life without me in a calm, systematic manner. To demonstrate to the court and our kids that he was the responsible father, he hired a full-time nanny, enrolled the children in therapy, and established a stable atmosphere. Our house has 6 bedrooms, so my first apartment was a little 1-bedroom. I would watch Noah and Lily carefully measure their words, their love now constrained and guarded, every other weekend. The lesson was about values, the importance of family, trust, and making deliberate decisions, not simply about an affair. Not only did David win the divorce, but he also gained the respect of our kids by demonstrating to them what real accountability looks like. By choosing stability, he earned everything, whereas I lost everything by pursuing a fleeting thrill.